Si protiv initially major skizny initially Billigana Buses team, Kimachini Dasache, Billigana Dasanale. Welcome back to Resball, where this time we're going to be talking about Stanford center Maxime Raynaud. Comes from France, had a monster year this year. Tell you a little bit of tale of Maxime Raynaud. I've been kind of out on him, and for me, it was a late riser in the process, but I know a ton of people that really it's hard to knock Maxime Raynaud, and we'll get into the game on Maxime Raynaud right about now. Maxime Raynaud, born in Paris, France, in Paris. He started off going to the Lycée Henri IV, Henri IV, if you want to say it in French. That's a secondary school. It's basically a high school in France. Why am I telling you about his high school? It doesn't have to do with his athletics, believe it or not. This Lycée Henri IV, it's basically like, Henry the Fourth school. If you translate it in English, it's like the Harvard Yale of the French secondary schools. I mean, it's super prestigious. You just have to look at the alumni. Michel Foucault, who's one of the most influential philosophers of the last like 100 years, if you know anything about the panopticon and like prison and that structure, that's a Michel Foucault thing and concept that a lot of people ended up borrowing in more recent times. Deleuze Deleuze, like there's another philosopher that came out of there, and Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote a bunch of books that were super influential, and Macron, the president, one of the presidents of France, graduated from there. So to say Maxime Raynaud is smart, I mean, he went to Stanford for crying out loud. Yes, of course, he's going to be smart. But I mean, to go to Lycée Henri IV, you got to be super smart to be able to make it there and graduate. Again, part of the reason why he went over to Stanford. The other thing, where is his basketball coming from? What is about his basketball background? Stop talking about his schooling, Steve. What do we care, right? Most people are gonna say that. Well, he played at Espoir Nanterre. Nanterre is like a region just kind of northwest of Paris. So Paris is like the center. Technically, like for us in America, we say like the suburbs of Paris. So Nanterre is like northwestern, just on the outskirts of Paris. And at Espoir Nanterre, he averaged 12.8 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, and he was teammates with some guy named Victor Wembanyama. I am going to think that the Spurs probably would have a vested interest in trying to get Maxime Raynaud. They're definitely not going to take him with the second overall pick. But I mean, if Wembanyama says like, "Hey, can you get a second round, another first round pick to get my buddy here?" They're obviously going to oblige, and I think it would be a good idea too. So I thought it was just cool. He came up with Wembanyama and was no slouch himself there. So the other last final thing on Maxime Reynaud, other than his Stanford career, remember I told you Danny Wolf was on that FIBA U20 team for Israel that won the silver medal? Well, the team that stopped them there in 2023 was France, and it was led by Maxime Reynaud, who was the leading scorer and got the gold medal for France, defeating that Israeli team in Danny Wolf. So part of the reason why I grouped them together, the other part of the reason why I grouped them together is because conference realignment, apparently I'm not paying enough attention. And I was just like, hey, let's put Maxime Raynaud here in this when I thought it was the ACC and the Big Ten. And then later on, I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot it's the ACC. It's going to take me a while to remember who's in what conference anymore. So this last season at Stanford, Maxime Raynaud scored 20.2 points per game, pulled in 10.6 rebounds per game, had 1.7 assists per game, 0.9 steals per game, and then 1.4 block per game, 2.4 turnovers per game. Shooting splits for Maxime Raynaud were 53% from 2-point range, 34.7% from 3-point range, and then 77% from that free throw line. All of this translates into a true shooting percentage of 55.8%. So right around the Danny Wolf thing. I think him and Danny Wolf, like, there should be a lot of conversations in war rooms of like, should we take Raynaud? Should we take Danny Wolf? Because they are probably going to do a lot of the similar things in the NBA. They lean more towards the offensive side of the ball. They can both shoot the threes. And despite the numbers not being as gaudy as a Danny Wolf, if you turn on the tape, it's only 1.7 assists per game, but you can see Maxime Raynaud knows how to pass. the last two seasons. As a junior, Maxime Raynaud at Stanford, 65 assists to 79 turnovers. That's obviously a bad assist to turnover ratio. But then as a senior, 58 turnovers to 84, or 58 assists to 84 turnovers. Again, another guy that you're going to have to tell to chill out. And one of the passes that Maxime Raynaud loved to do is the behind the back pass on the move. I'm not gonna lie. Every time he did it, I was excited, and he made quite a few of them. But that just gives you an idea of if you're gonna talk about turnovers, and I always do anytime more turnovers than assists. But it's obviously a bad thing. That's part of this. Is another guy that does have to chill out, but he makes the reads. And this season, I mean, Maxime Raynaud had a gigantic usage percentage. I don't know that we're going to look at another guy that has a higher usage percentage than 31.5%, which is what Maxime Raynaud posted this past season at Stanford. Pause real quick on Maxime Raynaud. They changed coaches Stanford from Jared Hayes, who recruited Maxime Raynaud. Last season, they only won like 16, 17 games. And they had a pretty good team like Spencer Jones, who's on the Nuggets now. I forget, there were a couple other dudes on that team that ended up pretty good. Caden Carlisle, who I really liked, but then went over to Indiana. Brandon Angel, Michael Jones, Andrej Stojakovic was there as well. So it was a pretty loaded team, and Maxime Raynaud was the leading scorer on that. So it was kind of like, what's going on with this guy? Like maybe the block numbers aren't there, all that stuff. But then Kyle Smith comes over from Washington State. Honestly, to be perfectly honest, I was really leaning more towards Michigan hiring Kyle Smith over Dusty May. I'm glad they didn't, but I still like Kyle Smith a lot and what he runs. And normally it was more like guard heavy. So I was kind of worried coming into the year, like, ugh, I don't know how Maxime Raynaud is really going to fit into this kind of more guard heavy style that Kyle Smith likes to run. But this just shows, and again, why I like Cosmos so much. It just seems like he knows, okay, let me see the personnel I have, and then I can adjust my tactics. I can adjust my system to fit the personnel that I have and to highlight the strengths of who I already have. And you ask any Washington State fan the last couple of years, if you were told them, hey, he's going to get a center, a lot of it's going to be like traditional big man type play, and that's going to be the number one guy. I don't know that too many people would have thought that it would have translated into this Stanford team, which was a lot better than last year, 21-14, with it being the Maxime Raynaud show. I mean, if he didn't score, they didn't really have a lot of other offense there. So kudos to Maxime Raynaud. And it points back to the turnovers where it's like, okay, we need you to be the man scoring a bunch of things. We also want you to be a primary playmaker. And we need you to increase your 3-point numbers. And oh boy, talk about the increase in 3-point numbers. Previous 3 seasons for Maxime Raynaud, he had a total of 133s in 3 seasons at Stanford. Kyle Smith comes over, they change the offense, and Maxime Raynaud, as a senior, 4th year, takes 193 threes. So he took more threes this one year than he did the entire 3 years before. I mean, you will not see that kind of an increase in volume of 3-point shots hardly ever, especially as a senior. Because normally as a senior, it's not like the time for a coach to be like, all right, let's try this out and see if you got better at it. It's normally like, okay, we know what you're good at. And especially at the center position in college, normally by that point, it's like, we know what you're good at. We need that to help us win. We're not trying to help you expand your game and increase your NBA draft potential. Most of the times it's let's just stick to what you're good at. But no, again, kudos to Kyle Smith, but even more kudos to Maxime Raynaud for continuing to put in the time. The 3-point shot is something since the sophomore season, because I've heard the name Maxime Raynaud for the last 2 years. I honestly heard it as a freshman too. Hearing the like, hey, this is Victor Wembanyama's buddy, and maybe not the first year, but I think long term, like he's an interesting guy that could be a stretch big. And then after the sophomore year, a lot of people went all in of like, no, Maxime Raynaud is going to be a first round pick. You just watch. And then the junior season happened, and people were still kind of like hemming and hawing him. I probably, if he did end up going last year, like second roundish pick, just because the potential was still there. He shot a 36.1% from 3, even though it was lower volume, 61% from 2-point range. And then the blocks are really like kind of the only concern on the defensive side. Again, another guy that I'll point to when we get to the NIL episodes of like, if your long-term goal is the NBA draft, I think this is another guy to point to in this, super early time of NIL of like, this is a guy that had every reason to go transfer somewhere else. His coach that recruited him is leaving. The guy that's coming in, the coach that's replacing him, doesn't necessarily have an offense that features him. And he could have probably gotten the bag from just about anywhere else that wanted him because he's super productive. I mean, if he wanted to go to the Big Ten and just back dudes down, that would have worked out. But no, he stayed put. He continued to work on his game and he stayed in the spot that wanted him and continued to feature him as the number one guy. Again, it's something to consider. I'm not sure what the money was that a Maxime Raynaud got here, but it was the right decision to stay because so much improved, and especially that 3-point number. I know the percentage 34.7% isn't fantastic, but this is one that I will like fight tooth and nail of like, no man, the increase in volume, and then for him to shoot around average percentage 34.7%, it says yes, he can definitely be a stretch big. And then the free throw percentage 77%. The last 2 seasons it's been 77% or better. When after the first 2 years, like it never got over 59.5%. Again, it showed the mechanical work that he got better at. I think it's probably better in the upper body than it is in the lower body. I believe in Maxime Raynaud as a 3-point shooter, but at the same time, I really do kind of hate his mechanics because sometimes it doesn't look like he's jumping the way his shot is. It's more like a hop shot, and it does take a little bit of time to get off. But after combing through the film and looking at it, number one, he knows how to use his size to shoot over the top of people, which should always be the thing. If you're 6'10" or taller and you're going to be a shooter, like what makes me buy into you is when you understand I'm just this tall. I have this 6'5" guy closing out on me. It's not going to make a difference. He's going to have to be like Michael Jordan, Vince Carter level athlete to get up there and block it. So even if my shot takes a long time to get off, like a Maxime Raynaud, I can still just shoot over the top of this guy because he is not like an unless he's this top tier athlete with his gigantic wingspan. I'm still going to be able to get it off. And the other things is playing off of other teammates and just getting better and having more confidence in it. And again, like I've said with Jam before, for me, it's less about the like picture perfect mechanics and more about does the shot keep going in? Is there clear indication that he can take more of them and gets better at it? And all the answers here are yes. So I'm sure there are people that are gonna number one nitpick the time it takes off and be like, it needs to be quicker, it needs to be quicker. I'm like, yeah, sure. If you want him to be like a feature part of the offense, if you're arguing him for be like a starter and like being primarily a stretch big, then yeah, absolutely it has to happen. But to me, it's not that big of a deal because I think if the ceiling is there, it's probably like fourth or fifth starter as well. And a lot of it is going to be the 3-point shot, but I really don't think Maxime Raynaud is going to be somebody that you just like has this gigantic free throw attempt rate, the 3-point attempt rate, because 34.3% in this fourth year was his career high. I think that's still totally fine. And the rest of the offense is great. The other thing is, man, Maxime Raynaud really crashes the glass, especially on defense. Every single season from freshman to senior year, it was 23% defensive rebounding or better. And really the last 2 years as a junior and senior, when he got 900 minutes or more, it was over 27% on the defensive glass. Just attacked it, ate it, made sure he made an impact on there. And the first 2 seasons when he really wasn't featured as the guy, he had a really good offensive rebounding percentage of 10% or better. I would argue that's going to come back in the NBA when you make a Maxime Raynaud more in a supplementary role where he doesn't have to take all this usage and he doesn't have the ball in his hands, and he goes back to being that lower usage guy. Then you're going to ask him to crash the glass. And if you watched any NBA combine games, that stuff showed up again. And offensive rebounding, I think, is a lost art a lot of times in the NBA, and it's hard to put it into the scouting report unless it pops like this to where it's like, man, he really knows how to do it while also not like burning his defense, where it's like, no, he's just chasing the offensive rebound. And then all of a sudden you're in these, 3-on-2 situations or 4-on-3 situations, because he's not getting back since he's attacking the offensive glass. But that's not the case here. I do like Maxime Raynaud's rebounding on both ends of the court. Again, the passing, although the turnover percentage was, or the turnover numbers, excuse me, more turnovers than assists the last 2 years. What are the percentages like? The percentage as a junior for Maxime Raynaud was 15.1% assist percentage to 16.6 turnover rate. That's not bad. It's not a gigantic gap. But anything over 15% turnover rate is concerning. So how did he end up bettering that, making it worse? What did it end up being as a senior? Well, assist percentage unfortunately went down as a senior to 11.9% assist percentage, but the turnover rate cut down significantly from 16.6% to 11.7%. So just slightly better assist percentage to turnover rate. And the turnover rate, this is where I will push back on the two guys I did before, like Danny and Vlad from Michigan, because I think their turnover rate was just super concerning. And Danny, again, leader in the "what are you doing, man" type of passer, pulling out the hair. You got to chill out, dude. And Vlad every year, like the turnover percentage was just way too high for a traditional center. But Maxime Raynaud, as a freshman, 22.5% turnover rate. Terrible. As a sophomore, 15.9% turnover rate. Not good either. Junior, 16.6% turnover rate. Ugh, like, please, is this going to get any better? And then the senior year, 11.7%. That was another thing, along with the 3-point shot, where it's clear he worked at it. He understood when I'm the guy now and how to get a little better as a passer. And the turnover percentage, I think, is definitely where the difference in passing shows up in the stats. So by the end of it, he did learn how to chill out. And the why I bring up the back to the behind the back pass, I think as a senior, like you saw him hit that pass a lot more. And every time he made it, it was like there was nobody there in between the guy and he passed it to. And he used his gravity to get the guy he's doing the behind the back pass to wide open. So it's like, okay, yeah, this absolutely tracks, and I would fight for it and want him to do that. Because how many 7-footers can do that kind of thing? And normally it was in either transition situations or when they let Maxime Raynaud bring the ball up the court. Either he got the rebound or somebody else did and they kicked it out to him. He's not like Danny Wolf in that you can give him usage and he's going to do like 4 or 5 pick and roll. But it's another thing in the arsenal. Think of like the Jalen Duren, bring the ball up the court occasionally. In Detroit with less of the what's going on here passing and somebody that can actually shoot a three. Can bring these numbers up. The NBA draft combine and the measurements for our guy Maxime Raynaud was 7 feet and a quarter inch without shoes, 236.8 pounds, and then Maxime Raynaud had a 7'1" and a quarter inch wingspan. The wingspan's a little bit disappointing. Spoiler alert, I'm not exactly sold on Maxime Raynaud's defense. I don't think it's bad, but when you saw Vlad had a gigantic wingspan, we saw Danny had like a plus 4-inch wingspan from 6'10" that was 7'2". So this is the one area where it's like, yes, he's still a 7-foot human being that has all these offensive skills. Yes, he still has a wingspan over 7 feet, but oh man, you wish it would be a little bit longer. And I do think this is where it does show up in film. And he's not like Maxime Renault is not this mega leaper or jumper. And then the block numbers really never got over 0.8. If I can give you the totals, the block percentage hovered around like 2 and 3%. It didn't get over that until a senior year when he was 4.6% block percentage. And then the block numbers, he never blocked more than 26 shots before this final season at Stanford. So that's the part to me where I'm like, it seems like he's adequate on defense now, whereas beforehand, that was the main thing with Maxime. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if he'll ever really be that great on defense. But the other thing is the combine games. He made defensive plays there. He never really gambled or got out of position. And the steals were pretty good too. I think he had 30 steals this year. It just seemed like he made a more conscious effort to play make on defense and not really burn the defense at the same time. So much of his game improved in the final year to where it's like, okay, I can see him being good enough at just about everything. And the defensive side, it seemed like he worked on positioning. He worked on staying true to being the center position. And I don't know if like being a little bit quicker or something like that, just understanding how to play the passing lanes a little bit better. and stay back to block those 50 shots and finally get over one shot block per game. So look at the shot chart for Maxime Raynaud. Honestly, out of these three guys we looked at, Danny Wolf, Vlad, and Maxime Raynaud, Maxime Raynaud is the easiest argument to make if you just looked at the shot chart. 110 shots in the mid-range, that has to be eliminated. Please get out of here. 30% in the mid-range. Oof. And if you look at the numbers there, 46 shots from left baseline, 41 from right baseline, 15 from right elbow, 8 from left elbow. The elbow stuff is like whatever. He's not going to be taking elbow jumpers in the NBA. The baseline stuff, though, a lot of that is trying to do like a baby hook, some kind of a turnaround shot. That stuff has to go, man. If you remember, I told you Maxime Raynaud's true shooting percentage was pretty much the same as Danny Wolf's, 55.8% for Maxime Raynaud. Eliminate that shot, man. If you eliminate that shot, which you didn't really take last year, 62.2% true shooting percentage is what a Maxime Raynaud had last year. I think it's largely due to this. Is like, stop shooting that baseline shot, man. And in the NBA, where you're going to transition into a more of a three-point shooter, more of a supplementary guy, I highly doubt a lot of teams are going to be like, even if you're a backup, hey, let's get you into that baseline area where you shot 28.3% from left baseline and 36.6% from right baseline. Those percentages make me sick. Stop shooting that baseline shot because everywhere else is really good. 34.3% on above the break threes, 175 threes. Again, this is the man who had like one other teammate who really took offensive pressure on him, who was a double-digit scorer. Everybody else not very consistent. So that 34.3% on above the break threes, a lot of hands in your face, a lot of double teams, a lot of grenades at the end of the shot clock that Maxime Raynaud had to do. And if you break them down into the different areas from above the break, 31% from the left wing, 18 of 58. I'm totally fine with that. 36.8% from top of the key, 20 of 76. That's the three-point shot he took the most. I imagine that's the three-point shot he's going to take in the NBA a lot too, pick and pop. Anytime you have a pick and pop big that can shoot the three from the longest part of the court, it just opens up so much more space and you can do more five-out stuff. And I mean, especially the guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Cade Cunningham, whose main operation and main attack is using pick and roll. I mean, if like OKC got their hands on him and Chet together, like, well, that's a really good. And again, Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, Castle, if they keep him, Devin Vassell just is like, yeah, you can see this. This is why I say when you look at the shot chart, it's the easiest argument to make out of the three of these guys. And then from right wing is 14 of 41, 34.1%. Again, this Stanford teammate loaded with talent. He's 31.5% usage. All of these three-point numbers from above the break are good, in my opinion, as the lead guy who's taking over 30% usage. And then from the corners, this is where Maxime Raynaud is going to have to get better. 3 of 10 from left corner, 4 of 8 from right corner. Those are such small sample size, it really doesn't tell you anything. In the NBA, not going to be like a top 10 pick, not going to be the guy. Probably going to be more of a backup to start your career. You got to work on being that corner three-point shooter. Because if you didn't just get good in the corners, be adequate from the left wing, right wing, like you're already doing, and your best shot is from top of the key, that's the absolute great stretch big that every team needs. Occasionally can start, do that kind of stuff. But I'm saving the best for last. Out of all these guys, these centers so far, 127 shots. Not as many as Vlad, but more than, I mean, he's like 71.7% of his shots. Again, out of the three guys we look at here, Danny Wolf, Vladislav Golden, Maxime Raynaud. Maxime Raynaud has the best rim percentage at 71.7%. Fantastic for being the guy. People not necessarily knowing if his three-point shot is going to fall. Like, this is the area where people were trying to push him out of and being like, oh, we're going to cut him off from the rim. It did not matter. I think Maxime Raynaud has a good balance of craft, touch, and enough physicality to get to the rim, which is why he got there 127 times and why he finished at such a high percentage, 71.7%. It's also why he shot 54.1% in the paint. That's 72 of 133 shots. I mean, the three-point shots are adequate, capable shooter, as Jam always says, and then elite in the paint and at the rim. That paint number is another one that's scorching hot, 54.1%, almost automatic there in the paint. It has a variety of moves. He can shoot from left hand, he can shoot from right hand, he can turn over both shoulders. Again, I don't know that many teams are going to ask him to do this, but this is absolutely 100% somebody that you can say, hey, if you have a mismatch, go take advantage of it because he is going to exploit it as he did all year. One of the film sessions I did that really turned my opinion on Maxime Raynaud was against North Carolina this year. If you listen to the Drake May episode, you heard my rant on like, I don't know what North Carolina was doing, playing four guards in your top six that are all essentially point guards and like 6'3" and smaller. That was the one game where Maxime Renault was like, all right, man, let me feast. And he did 4 blocks, like 25 points. I think he had like 14 rebounds. It was like, yeah, that's absolutely what you want to see where there's a team that's playing so small. And poor Drake Powell in that one on the occasion that he was the power forward that had to guard him, regardless of the athleticism and everything else. He ain't no 7 feet. So, and he's not built necessarily to be defending the guy in the post like this. I really like Maxime Reynaud's overall offensive game to be an elite finisher. Again, somebody who can take advantage of a mismatch very easily. I think he's a fine ball handler. You're not going to worry about him over dribbling. Occasionally can let him handle things like bring the ball up the court or do things in the half court. The last two areas of concern for a Maxime Reynaud for me, though, are as a screener. Like, I'm still not necessarily sold. I've said this a million times before. I'll say it a million times after this. There are so many dudes in the college basketball and pre-NBA who aren't good screeners that eventually have to learn it and get better at it. I think this is another guy that's going to do that. It'll take a while, but I think he'll be totally fine there. Maybe not like the elite screen setter, but he did it enough to where I feel like it's not gonna really kill him, and this isn't something that you're not going to ask to screen and wouldn't be willing to do it. And then the other part is defense. Yeah, even though the block numbers got better, even though it's 1.4, even though it's over 4% block percentage, I'm still not sold this is ever going to be somebody who's more than just like an average defender, which again is totally fine. I have Maxime Raynaud at 25 on my big board. You don't find this variety of skills on offense from a big man. And if I had to pick between a Danny Wolf and a Maxime Raynaud, like my head of scouting, my GM, my president of basketball operations is like, okay, we are looking for an offensively leaned big. Like we want somebody who contributes more on offense. We need somebody who has some upside to where we can believe in that could be a spot starter. And we also don't want them to get completely cooked on defense. I am going to lean more toward Maxime Raynaud because he does do a less of the oh my gosh, bro, what are you doing passes that Danny does. And I've seen more tape on Maxime Raynaud without a Vladislav Golden to pick up for him on defense or have to handle the more physical and the actual center on the other team. So I do feel much more confident in a Maxime Raynaud and that improvement, the shooting, his improvement in the passing and chilling out and cutting down on turnovers, and his dedication to getting better as a defensive playmaker, it all points to somebody that, at the very minimum, is always going to be a positive guy in your rotation who, yes, does lean more towards being a good offensive player, but you're not going to really think that they're going to get you killed on defense all the time. The comp that I ended up with Maxime Raynaud is Frank Kaminsky. It was weird. I just saw this thing the other day of like top draft busts, and then Frank Kaminsky was on there. I'm like, he played 8 years in the NBA. His 3-point percentage career average was like 34%, and he averaged something like 19 minutes per game. Like that's man, if that's a bust, then I don't know what to tell you. You got some too high standards, whoever wrote that. But I could see that with Maxime Raynaud as well. If you don't remember Frank Kaminsky, it took a while for him to catch on. I think he was first drafted by Charlotte, where, sorry, Charlotte Pins, a lot of talent goes to die. And they're really like over reliant on him and wanting him to do more. But then he went to Phoenix and became more of a stretch big and then was like a real legit more contributor in their lineup. Sometimes could start, mostly came off the bench, but found his spot there and stayed in Phoenix for like 4 or 5 seasons and was always a positive contributor there. I think Maxime Raynaud is a better athlete than that, and I think he can give you more on defense to not really be as much of a liability as Frank, who I think had more trouble laterally and was in that difficult transition between like, okay, we'll take the centers who are tall and we don't necessarily need them to move versus Draymond Green changed the game and now we have to have guys that won't get killed on switches. So I think Maxime Reno is better prepared for that kind of an NBA to where, yes, I think it's still like a Frank Kaminsky type of career where it might take a little while for him to catch on and to readjust to his role from being the man to being a supplementary guy and a stretch big in the NBA. But once he catches on, I think that the athletic limitations of a Frank Kaminsky aren't going to be there, but the same role is going to be there of a stretch big and somebody you can always depend on or rely on to average around 19 points per game and at the very minimum be a capable shooter of around 34%. And really in the Phoenix years for Frank Kaminsky too, he became a above average shooter, and I would definitely buy into that for Maxime Raynaud as well. There's so much good content on YouTube with Maxime Raynaud, maybe like the draft darling this year from the internet and Twitter and all that. College basketball scouting has a nice Maxime Raynaud Stanford 2024-2025 draft scouting highlights. The ACC Digital Network actually put together an NBA draft tape for Maxime Raynaud. It's about 2 minutes. The Charlotte Hornets interviewed Maxime Raynaud at the Combine. Definitely go check that out. One of my guys, Hardwood Hoops Central's NBA Draft Green Room. 3 hours, 6 minutes, 50 seconds. If you got the time, absolutely look at all this film on Maxime Raynaud, 4-year career. Fantastic journey to see where he came from as a freshman to being a 20-point per game scorer as a senior. It's a worthwhile investment. Look at those 3 hours. Ciro Alesso has a great, Ciro Acesso has a great Who is Maxime Raynaud video on YouTube. Stanford Athletics did a cool day in the life of Maxime Raynaud about 4 months ago. And then last, but certainly not least, Locked On NBA Big Board has a one-on-one with Maxime Raynaud. Raphael there thinks he's the most skilled big man in the 2025 NBA draft. And I shouldn't say last but not least because there are two more. AVC is a Maxime Raynaud NBA Ready 2025 scouting report, about 31 minutes, 30 seconds, another great resource. And then Sleepers Media, Maxime Raynaud scouting report is another fantastic one. I wanted to say there was one more, but that might be it. Swish, if you want to look at that one game that he had with 20 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists at the NBA Draft Combine, Swish did put that together too, so definitely worthwhile to check it out if you didn't see of any Maxime Raynaud at the Combine. Maxime Raynaud, fantastic offensive big man there. Can do just about a little bit of everything on offense and is going to transition into a great center stretch 5 role player. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. We'll catch you next time. Whole new position group. We'll see what it is. Abone.